witches, how you doing today? We're going to talk a little bit about creating your own witchcraft spells today. I find it something that some people just love doing, some people are a little hesitant to get into, so we're going to talk about some of the things to consider, the ins and outs, and I'll give you a few tips and tricks on how I like to do it. For those of you who are new, my name is Taya. Welcome to the channel where we talk about all things witchcraft, especially traditional witchcraft. That's where my heart lies. And for those of you who are returning viewers, maybe coming in from another video, thank you so much. I appreciate the support, and all of you, please consider subscribing. It's a great way to help us build the channel. So, creating your own witchcraft spells. First of all, let's define what is a spell, because I think it's sort of important to make sure we're all on the same page. So, a spell in witchcraft affects change on an energetic level. So if you think about life, from any given moment, there are an infinite possible outcomes, right? There's like all these different things that might happen. And what you're doing is sort of with a spell, you are energetically nudging your course, your path down your preferable outcome. Okay? So you can do that through energetic manipulation, or you can also have spirit intervention, right? You could have a spirit or a deity who come in and intervene and move that path where you want it to go. But here's the thing about spellcraft. It takes a concentrated, deliberate effort. You can't accidentally cast a spell. And I know sometimes people get a little like, oh, I don't want to mess with things, I might accidentally. Listen, it takes a very concentrated, deliberate effort to affect that sort of change. And the more you're trying to change something off of a likely course, the more energy or intervention it's going to need. So, what goes into a spell? What do we need to consider? What are the different topics? The first is intent, the timing, the ingredients, the delivery method, which is also sort of a little bit connected to the spell release method, the actual energetic input or spirit input, or spirit pacting, if you will, and then finally the maintenance and or disposal of your spell. So let's get into it. We'll go through each of those things and then I'll give you a few tips. I'll give you a few examples from my body of spell work. So the first is intent. And you hear it all the time. Oh, intent is everything. No, intent is not everything. It is just one part of successful spell work. So what is intent? Well, first of all, it's having one focus for your spell. And sometimes that's the hardest part. You've got, say, maybe a family member who's sick and you'd want them, you want them to get better and you want them to be protected and you want them to be purified and you want them to feel loved. And it's like, okay, you got to pick one. The best outcomes for your spells have one singular focus. It needs to be realistic. It needs to be within the realm of possibility. Right? If you're sitting here going, oh, I want $1 million by Friday. Let's be honest, how realistic is that? It's possible, but think about how far you have to shift your path over to that desired outcome. That's a really big shift. That's going to require a monumental amount of energy or a really big spirit intervention. Let's be honest, most of us cannot do spell work to bring us $1 million in 2 days. So it needs to be somewhat realistic. You need to give it a time frame. When do you want something to happen by? Right? Because again, if you just leave it open-ended, sometimes it is just open-ended. I just want general protection and I want it all the time. But sometimes it's like, I need, this thing to happen by this date. Right? I want a new job. Well, if you just leave it out there, when you get a new job 2 years down the line, was that because of your spell work or did that peter out? Like, who knows? You need to set a time frame. I want it in the next 2 months. I want it in the next 2 weeks. And it needs to be actionable. So what I mean by actionable is that you want to be able to have mundane actions supporting your spell work. Okay, so if it's, I want to make more money, are you going to go in and ask your boss for a raise? Are you going to go buy a lottery ticket? Are you going to hit your side hustle hard? But it's got to have something actionable in the mundane world to support it. Because if you just want, say, $200 by Friday, but you just want to sit on your couch, again, that doesn't give the universe a lot to work with to move that pathway over to the probability of getting $200. But if you're out there hustling and you're asking for a raise at work and you're playing the lottery, that gives the universe 3 different ways that it can fulfill that outcome, 3 different possibilities that you're nudging it towards in the mundane world to help support your magical intentions. Okay? So that's intent. The second is timing. So looking at what's going on in your life right now. I mean, are you running around with a chicken with your head cut off right now? Maybe it's not a good time for spell work, right? Maybe you need to wait until your life is a little, you've got an afternoon free, or you've got some time. So first of all, you need to look at your actual, what's going on in your life, and make sure that you're in a place to do the work that needs to be done. And then you look at the more specific timing. So things that go into it are things like moon phases. Is it a full moon? Is it a new moon? Is it the dark moon? Is it the gibbous moon, right? We're looking at balance for the gibbous moon. The new moon is like new beginnings and, beginning new things. The full moon is about like manifesting and making those big dreams come true. The dark moon is about banishing and, again, and the waxing and the waning and all the different moon phases. You can look at the solar cycle. So where are we in the year? Is it the dark half of the year or the light half of the year? Is there like a specific solar Sabbath that's coming up whose energies would lend well to the work that I want to do? You can look at days of the week. So different days of the week are ruled by different planetary aspects. I'm going to pull out my book here because, again, this isn't something I have memorized, but Sunday is ruled by the sun and it's good for vitality and self-confidence. Monday is ruled by the moon and it's good for fertility and lucid dreaming. Tuesday is ruled by Mars. It's good for protest and self-defense. Wednesday is ruled by Mercury, which is good for communication and divination. Thursday by Jupiter for wealth and travel. Friday is Venus for love and beauty. And Saturday is ruled by Saturn for protection and binding. So again, there's like a specific day of the week for each one of those planetary influences. So you might want to work with that. The other one to look at is planetary hours. So each hour of the day is ruled by one of those different planets. So you basically can get, let's see if we can see this, a chart like this, and you start your day at sunrise and you end your day at sunset, and then your night begins at sunset and goes until sunrise. So you figure out the sunrise and the sunset, and then you divide the time in between by 12, and you'll get an increment of, say, 45 minutes or an hour and a half, however long a planetary hour on that day is. Then you go around by the day. It's quite complicated. I can't explain it all here, but there are different planetary hours in the day, and you might want to work with, so you could work with the hour of Mars, so protest and self-defense, on the day of Saturday, which is Saturn, for protection and binding. So you're bringing in self-defense and protection in that hour of that day. So there's all different ways you can kind of combine those together. And again, all these different timings. And you might not work with any of it, but you might pick one or two of these to really pull in and maximize the, what would you call it? The energetic frequencies of the world around you, of the moon and the sun and the day and the hour. Those can all bring extra oomph into your spell work. Then we look at ingredients. So again, this is where you're going to pull out your correspondence tables. I love this book. All right, it is a complete book of correspondences by Llewellyn. All right, so you just look up, okay, I'm going to look up friendship. All right, for friendship, it tells me, it gives me the moon phase to work with. It gives me what rune, the numbers, the element, the colors, the trees, the herbs that go with it, miscellaneous plants, gemstones and minerals, goddesses and gods, animals, birds, you name it. So I can look that up for friendship or for whatever I want to bring into my spell, and then I'm just going to start making lists. Typically what I'll do is I'll have more than one. So say I'm working with protection and I'm working with self-defense. Those are kind of the same thing, but a little bit different, right? So I'll see what corresponds between both of them. Is there an herb or a gemstone that they share? In which case that's got like double whammy to it, right? So I'm going to start pulling out those correspondence tables, and you can look at things like herbs, crystals, essential oils, animals, runes and symbols, different colors, different numbers, all sorts of different correspondences. And the one thing I will tell you, and this is really important when you're looking at putting together your ingredients, is work with what you have. Find local substitutions. So if there's some ingredient and you're like, I don't have that, find something local that you can substitute in. And we're going to talk a little bit about that when I give you an example at the end, okay? Because there's a couple different reasons why. First of all, you want to work with herbs that you have access to. You want to work with things that you already have some type of spiritual connection to, with the spirit of that plant. Now, I might not have sat down and done a bunch of work to have a spiritual connection with dandelions, but I'm already going to be more familiar with a dandelion than I am with some spell ingredient from Australia or South America, okay? So again, find something local that you can work with. Then you need to look at the delivery method and the release method, which kind of go hand in hand. So is it going to be like a candle spell or a puppet or a talisman? Is it going to be a talisman that you wear, a talisman that you maybe hang in a window? Is it going to be a jar or a bottle? Is it going to go in a bowl? Is it going to be a sigil? All those kind of things you have to consider. Something like a candle, then you're using fire. Fire and burning is your release method, right? Something like, say, a puppet, you might not have a release method. You might just keep that puppet. Say you were doing a puppet for health, right? Your own personal health. So that puppet, you might just keep it somewhere safe on your altar, and its just existence is just going to be, it's going to sort of be ongoing. But it might be that, say you're doing a puppet to dissolve negative feelings, and you're going to bury it in your backyard and let it decompose under, you know, you're going to make it out of, I don't know, something decomposable, and you're going to bury it in your garden in the back, and it's slowly going to dissolve back into the earth, and it's going to take all those negative feelings or energies with it, right? So there's different release methods. Often people look at earth, air, fire, and water. So earth and water are like slow. Air and fire are fast dissipation or release methods. In earth, you're burying something, you're smothering something, and it usually has to do with the physical. Air, you're going to dissipate or diffuse something, and it usually has to do with like ideas and thoughts. Fire, again, you're going to burn something, and that usually has to do with like passion, right? Passion or action. Water, you're going to dissolve something, and it's going to slowly dissolve something, and it often has to do with emotions. So you can kind of play with those elemental correspondences along with a delivery method that will kind of come up with a, again, what corresponds best to what you're trying to achieve. Then you're going to look at energetic or spirit input. So typically we're going to want to raise energy of some sort. So are you just raising energy from yourself? Maybe you're just sitting doing a quick spell and you're like, boom, just going to raise some energy within my own body and infuse it. I could do that by rocking, by dancing, by drumming, by chanting. Or maybe I want to tap into the cosmic energy, which you typically would do through like a visualization. So I'm going to like visualize the roots going down out of my feet into the earth and tapping into that, into like the forge fire in the center of the earth. And then I'm going to envision up off of the top of my head you know, an energetic stream connecting up into the star fire in the heavens, and then those two, one coming down, one coming up into my body and mixing, and then I'm going to do some rocking, dancing, drumming, or chanting to sort of pull those energies into my body, and then you need to transfer or diffuse over that energy. So are you going to place hands? Are you going to channel it? How are you going to do that? Maybe you're going to say an incantation. All right, so that's one way to energetically like infuse your spell. The other way is to create a spirit connection, right? To ask spirit to come in. And how are you going to do that? How are you going to bring that spirit, its attention and awareness into your space? Are you just going to invite it in? Are you going to evoke it into your space? Are you going to invoke it into your body? Are you working with an ancestor, a goetic demon, an angel, a deity, or maybe just a land spirit? Are you making, and then once it's there, are you making a pact with it? Are you giving it an offering? Is it a one-time offering? Like, hey, I'm offering you this to go and do, I'm offering you X to go and do Y? Or is it if you go and do X, I will give you Y maybe every daily over the next week? Or maybe it's going to be something where I give you this each month until whatever's accomplished, etc. So you need to sort of look at that spirit component if you're using that idea. And then finally, when you're looking at energetic and energy input, you also need to decide how ritualized you want this to be. So typically if there's a lot of energy, if there's working with the spirit, you want to maybe do this within a compass round, right? You want to create that liminal space for this to happen in. Whereas at other times, maybe you're just sitting at your altar really quick doing something. And I'll give you kind of an example at the end of when I've done that. So again, how ritualized is this energy raising, spirit pacting going to be? And finally, what you want to look at is maintenance and disposal. So is it an ongoing spell, like a talisman or a charm, or maybe a jar spell you've done that needs to have maintenance? And how are you going to maintain it? Are you going to maybe just put it between your hands and charge it periodically? Are you going to set it out every full moon? Are you going to burn a candle over it every once in a while? Like, right, again, how are you going to maintain that spell and keep it going? Or is it a one-shot, something you just did once? And again, how are you going to dispose of that now that you're done? Or maybe that ongoing spell has run its course and it's time to dispose of it. So what I like to do is remove anything that's reusable. So like a stone or a jar, and that can be cleaned and then cleansed, and if needed, charged, and then you'll be able to use it again. Take anything compostable and compost it. And if it's not compostable, can I put it down the drain? And anything left over goes in the garbage. So if it's beeswax, I can compost it. If it's a paraffin candle, then it just goes in the garbage. And guys, don't worry about just putting it in the garbage. Do it mindfully. Sometimes people have certain chants they like to do. They like to sort of ritualize the disposal. That's up to you. I kind of don't really. I just sort of tend to be like, okay, thank you for doing your job. Boom, there you go. Some people like to look at earth, air, fire, and water again. Now, the only thing I'll caution is don't be putting things like essential oils or spell oils into running water, right? That's just polluting. Don't be burying broken glass out in the earth. It's not going to decompose. It's just going to sit there until it gets dug up. But again, earth, right? If an earthy spell you're going to bury those remains. In air, you're going to disperse the remains into the wind. Fire, you're going to burn them. Water, you're going to release it into flowing water. So some people like to sort of follow that in their disposals. But typically, I just remove anything reusable and then compost what's left. And anything that's not compostable just goes in the garbage. Now that is a lot to take into consideration when you're creating a spell absolutely from scratch. So here's my suggestion, and this is what I do. Do a little bit of research. Reference some spell books. Find similar spells that you can build on or adapt to what you want to do. Because then a lot of these things are sort of already taken into consideration. So, oh, I didn't show you this one. When I was talking about incantations, this is The Witch's Art of Incantation, Spoken Charms, Spells, and Curses in Folk Witchcraft by Roger J. Horn, one of his newer books. Great book full of all kinds of really cool incantations that you can look through and adapt and see what's going to work for what you're doing for your spell work. But here's like a great resource. When you're looking for spells to build off of, the Element Encyclopedia of 5,000 Spells. I think you can still get this one. It's a huge book, and it has got spells from all over the world in it, all kinds of different types of spells that you can take, you can build on. There's lots of different spellcraft books out there. You can Google it. You can find all sorts of different things that you can kind of play off of to create your own spells. So you kind of get a bit of a framework, but I would always recommend adjusting it to meet your own needs. So here's some examples from my own body of spell work. I did a road opener spell. Right? It's about removing blocks and obstacles, just opening the road so I can successfully just have at her. Now, in most road opener spells, it calls for an ingredient called Abre Camino. Don't know if I'm saying that right. A-B-R-E, Abre Camino, C-A-M-I-N-O. Okay. That's not something local up here in Canada. Abre Camino, it is a South American herb. Now, I could go on Amazon and order it and have it here in like 2 days, but I have no relationship with that plant, with that plant spirit. So I'm basically trying to work with the spirit of a plant that exists hundreds of thousands of miles from a land hundreds of thousands of miles away from me. So instead, I went and I said, what do I have here locally that calls in similar correspondences? And I built my own list of, right, for any spell ingredient that wasn't local here. I went and found something local, something that I had some type of relationship with, and pulled that into my spell instead. And it was a very successful spell. The roads that I need opened were opened, and everything, it was really amazing, actually. It was a really, really great spell. I did another one for dissolving emotional blocks. So for this one, I was like, okay, we're working with emotions, but I don't, like, it's not something I want to burn away. It needs to be gentle. So emotions is water, gentle, gently dissolving. I thought that would work. I mean, also could have worked with air and that idea of dissipating, but I was like, I wanted exactly that. I want to just dissolve some emotional blocks. And so I worked with water, and I thought, I could put a regular piece of paper, like write what I want dissolved on a piece of paper. But just like a piece of like printer paper is going to take forever to dissolve in water. So instead, I made my own handmade paper that dissolved over the course of about 2 hours. All my slips of paper were completely dissolved. And then for disposing it, I disposed of it down the running water down my drain. Okay? Speaking of incantations, I did a cord cage, and it's a very traditional craft, if you will. You take sticks and you put them, like you make a cross, and then you make one coming straight through, so you have this 3-dimensional kind of cross, and you wrap red yarn around your, like a rowan stick. I didn't have rowan, so I used willow instead. And to imbue the intent and energy, I wrote my own chant. And it went, as I weave this thread tonight, let it trap within its might any spirit with ill intent that shows up here by accident. Okay? And that was my way of building energy, of infusing my intent and my energy into this work as I did it. It took me about 45 minutes to wind all the cord around and create this cord cage. And finally, yeah, sometimes it's just super impromptu. Like that road opener, the oil had to be created on a specific full moon, and I think it had to wait. You left it until the next full moon, or was it maybe at the new moon into the full moon? There was like lunar correspondences on how long it had to sit and like create the oil, and then you had to like decant it, and then you used it in the actual spell that had to happen on a certain moon night, and there was a lot of detailed correspondences that went into that road opener. But I did another one, and it was super impromptu. It was for, I had some ducks in my backyard, and I went to go basically get a box to put them in, to put the ducklings in, to take them down to the local pond, and by the time I got back, they were gone. And I was really worried about them because I was very invested in these ducklings that were born in my backyard. So it was super impromptu, and literally I just grabbed the nest, the nesting materials and the broken eggs that were left. I put them in a jar. I put them on the pentacle on my altar. I put a stone on top. I put some frankincense oil over it. I lit my candles to the Witch Father and the Witch Mother, and basically implored from my heart of hearts, like half an hour. I just sat there just praying, please, please keep these ducklings protected. Let them get there safely. Keep them protected. Let them get there safely. And it was like my heart of hearts just pouring all that energy from myself into this nest, into this open dialogue with deity, right? It was a little bit of spirit work, a little bit of spirit pacting. And I did that for about half an hour. And then a half an hour after I'd stopped, I got a message from one of my neighbors saying, hey, I found your ducklings, by the way. And yeah, I put them in a box and took them down, and they're fine. I just thought I'd let you know. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. So again, it can be, you know, that super impromptu pacting with the Witch Father and the Witch Mother. It can be a crazy detailed road opener, right? How many details you take into consideration just depend on the time and the space. And we are looking at like 25 minutes. So we are going to end this here. Do you write your own spells? Tell me, how do they go? Is there something from here you'd like more detail on? Let me know. I can always certainly do more detailed videos at a later date, but we don't have any more time now. So thanks for hanging out, and we'll catch you in the next video. Mwah! Thanks so much, you guys.